This is Dave McCain with the Right Tree Genealogy, doing part 2 of the Getting Started in Genealogy series. The first video was covered on basics of how to get started. This one will cover some of the aspects of what we gained from the first part and go into some next steps that you need to do. So let's get into the video. So getting started with this, I want to state that this is based on my 40 years of experience and research, that I do not get paid by or sponsored by any of the companies I may mention. This is literally either companies I use or I've seen documents from that are useful to get into our research. So after stating that, let's go forward. This document right here was one available to me back in the 80s and the 90s, and what I filled out forms of, and I just thought I'd show an image of that for people to see. Back in the 90s and 2000s, I got documents from other people, and here's good examples of what I was referencing. Here's a family group sheet, was filled out by another researcher and sent to me. I actually helped assist in this document. My name's listed here. He sent me several pages. This happens to be the page associated with what I helped him with, which was Jane McCain. He did not have her surname. And this is MC McCracken or Mordecai McCracken that married their daughters, and so we worked together. But this is a list of people that helped provide information to this gentleman in his research, and he listed their names of who provided that information. Now I will say that he also has each one of those people's records separately of how to get back in contact with them. And then here's another example that I got a copy of on July 13th 2000 from the LDS, or Family Search as it's known today. And I'm going to go ahead in a little more detail on this one over here in my next slide. I blew it up for us to look at. Just because you start a record does not mean you stop right there and you never look at it again. This is an example of a record that was started in 1939 and continued up to 1961. So records can be dynamic and fluid that you're creating. Don't just assume it's done, you put it away, it's filed, never to look at again. You may be pulling it out for years, decades even. And so then that leads to, what do I want to know? That's a blank page, just like the other part that we started with. What you want to know as a researcher is different than the next person. So with that said, what do I or you want to know? Okay? You take what you learned from part 1 of your own analysis of writing down what you know personally, and then what you want to know, and it helps you get together what your goals are of your research. And that's what's important of this part 2. This is the beginning of the real work, okay? As a genealogist, it's not instant. You can't just do a website and say, my name is this, here's your family. You may find one, but you still got to document what those are. So it's not as easy as just clicking a few buttons. I mean, this takes work. The first step, and I want to make this very clear, I'm going to put myself down in the small corner here again. First thing in this next step is to define what you as the researcher's end goals are for your research. Now, this is subject to change and most likely will over time. But that's okay. You need to start somewhere, okay? And when you need to start somewhere, you get it down on paper and then you go from there. And some questions you need to ask yourself is, do I want to trace my surnames back to the beginning of time? I mean, there are some researchers that every surname, once they get a surname to a point to where surnames no longer exist in that country that they're from, that family line's from, then they go to the next one and they try to solve down through each one of them to get them to where they end, and then they say, I've done what I can do. Some people just say, where do they live? I know where I'm at today. Where did we live in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s? That's a question that some people want to do, and that's one of those things. It's a direction that some people want to go. And then some people have just straight out mysteries in the family. Why did my grandpa change his name? I mean, for instance, my grandfather was born Alan Thurman, okay? Long spelling. He changed his name to John Allen Thurman, short name. Why did he do that? So was a family question I had. So that's something you might find out that you're looking for here. Or do I want to know why my family came to this town or city? You have some families that you find them, your family, say, well, my grandparents were born in Texas, but now they're in Virginia. Why did they go from Texas to Virginia? Well, you might think the other direction, it makes more sense, but what if they go that direction? Why am I in this town or city? Those are questions. Now with those, it goes to the next piece of this. Most of these previous questions listed still need the following, no matter what the question is. Make a list of who knows your family, who could possibly know your ancestors. That will help you determine more specific information as you step forward. Then you need to know, what questions should I ask family members or friends to get to my end questions I'm trying to find out about. When I exhaust who list, where can I get additional answers? Okay. Now let's just pick on the very first one. Make a list of who is living that can tell me about my ancestors. Now, if at all possible, you want the oldest generation that you can find here. Oldest generation. Again, it seems silly to state it once you hear it, but a lot of people, they don't necessarily know all those people to talk to. So that's when it gets into, be ready to change your list, because you go to your grandma and your grandma says, well, I don't know this, but old John knows everything. And old John happens to be a family friend that she knows that's a few years older than her, that knew the family better than she did. She was the younger of the children type of thing. But you don't assume the answers you get are all correct. You just take those and put them in for the bigger picture, to fill in for your bigger puzzle that you have for your end goals. Now, looking at some of those questions, some of those questions you ask they need to be open-ended in cases, or not very hard questions for that person that you're talking to, the friend or the family member. And I've got a couple examples of some questions here. I know my dad's name is John Henry Bailey, but I don't know where he came from or his birthday or anything about him. Do you happen to know? So you're asking somebody, and it usually, especially the older generation, it's important to them, someone actually asks them things. So you'll be surprised what you'll learn when you do that interview question. Or mom doesn't know her grandma Gertrude's family name. Do you happen to know it? What if Grandma Gertrude got married and she only knew it from that married name, but she was married before. In actuality, her surname is a different name. For instance, instead of Brown that we think it is, it may be Meadows. Her actual maiden name is Meadows. She got married to your line as a Brown. You need to make sure you know that information. So that's why that question could come about. And that person could help you there. And then you could have this open-ended question like, I've heard that we're Scottish or we're Irish or something like that, But I was also told that you know a lot of stuff. Anything you can help me with would be helpful. And when you ask that, or kind of open-ended statement like that, that person might start, well, yeah, I've got some things about that I can tell you, or you need to ask it back in a little more details with them, but at least you're opening the story for the person to start thinking. And it could take a few visits to a person before they actually remember these things. Don't just jump in, I got to know this, which is something I did sometimes in my youth. You you visit them and you let them think about a question, and if it looks like they don't understand, that's fine. We'll talk about it later. I'll come see you later, and maybe we can talk about it again. Give them that opportunity. But asking the questions or putting together the questions is the next step there. And always remember your end goals. Okay, what are you trying to gain from this conversation that benefits your research in the family line, or whatever your research topic is for the genealogy? Now, the next thing I get asked about a lot is, well, I don't have anybody, or my list is exhausted. What do I do? Well, that's where you take the information you have of what you know and start looking into local courthouses cemeteries where you know where your parents were buried or grandparents or somebody associated with the family. You can start looking into the historical societies in a town, in a county, in a townland, those type of things. They have records that you don't realize they have, and you go there if you could possibly get those trips in. And then I'm going to point out another biggie here, and that is one I've said several times in videos. FamilySearch.org, it's free, okay? Start there when you can't make your trips, or if you are not able to get out as much to these other questions and to these other people. You can start with what you know, get down your list of what you want to know, and start looking at Family Search. And I have other videos on those. You can get in there, and it's free to search in there and find records and pull down records. So use them to the fullest. And now this is kind of like a bonus document I put up here. This is an actual form I created. This is from me. My parents were having their 50th anniversary in May of 1997. And this is a family gathering. I'm taking an opportunity at a family gathering. And I gave this out to the guests. Now I want to state this. Some of the guests were receptive. Some of the guests were not so receptive. Some of them just kind of looked at me and said, I'm just not doing it. And that's fine. I took advantage of an opportunity to use a family gathering, a joyous family gathering, my parents' 50th anniversary, and to find out things that, even though I've been researching, this is May 1997, and I'd already been researching about 14 years. And there was still information I did not have from some of the cousins and some of the other family members that showed up. So to me, this is an opportunity. They were there. Ask them now that they're together. This person did not fill out the details of the form, and they really didn't want to get any more. I mean, the spouse already attached them to them, so I knew that when I attached this to that person. But they didn't give me any additional information about where their parents were from. However, at least I got a birth date out of this. I got the person's full name. I got a location where they were born. Those are all beneficial things. I just wanted to show you this is a piece that I got even years after I got started. You still can get one of these basic forms together and present it at a family gathering. So for conclusions, take what you know, get your end research goals together. Yes, they could change over time, but you got to start somewhere, and that will keep you focused on what you're learning at this point. When you redefine what your focus is or what you're wanting to do, that's fine. You still have those records. They're going to help you in your research. Your part one of this video series covered what you need to write down that you know. In the second part, once you put together a list of what your goals are, that's going to help you even if you change what your final goal is. At least it's there for you to look at. Keep it organized because you're going to gather a lot of stuff. Okay, you'll want to digitize your records and put all those documents that you either got copies of or handed down to you in a safe place, and have the other ones digitized. You want to have a couple copies of each of these documents so they can be passed forward. And then the last thing on this part of this is, get your tree online. There's Ancestry.com, there's MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, FamilySearch.org, etc. They have options for you there, and there's other places as well. Okay, it's not my statement to you of what to use, it's what you want to use. Now, I personally use Ancestry.com. That's my primary location for my online family tree. That's because it's attached to DNA, and it pulls up cousinships, and I can look at those on that DNA. That's the end of part 2. Please consider subscribing at this button here, watching these other videos, give it a like, and share this video with others if you think that they could benefit from the learning that I'm providing. I'm here to help. Let's do this together. Thank you.